specific part. And after that, I have carried out maybe I think 3-4 valuation for some startups.
So what are your expectation from today's session, Sandeep? What are you looking for, the takeaway from this session?
So basically, I think for me the takeaway would be that what I'm expecting is that whenever I draft any report, so based on certain facts, how do I consider the caveats, etc., in the report? What all disclosures, etc., should be made in the report? What matters, what doesn't matter? I think this is kind of some use.
Okay, you touched about the caveat. Definitely, we will try to cover in our presentation.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Vasu, you are from which class?
I'm from Securities and Financial Assets.
SFA. Okay.
Yeah.
Have handled valuations in the past?
Yeah, I have done 3-4 valuations. Yeah.
3-4 valuations.
Yeah.
Any complex, for example, convertible instruments
No,
valuation?
not complex as such right now. Only for the ratio and new issue.
Okay. Do you think you have you can jointly work with the other valuers category?
I would like to.
Nini, do you think any area where we can do jointly?
Yeah, when we go for IBBA valuations, insolvency valuations, I think we have to work together with other valuation class valuers for land and building and plant and machinery. So yeah.
So I would like to know there is when you are doing a valuation for plant and machinery, and incidentally there is a intangible assets.
Yeah.
For example, software is there.
Yeah.
What do you think the plant and machinery, where it is clubbed, it is coupled with software, sometimes CNC machines are there. What do you think the role, whether it is a joint or it is a plant and machinery valuers will do it? So
the thing is, as per what I believe is, if the whole plant and machinery and intangible asset is to be valued for valuation of the equity share of the financial asset which we are transferring from one person to another, then I think we have to do it jointly. But if it is simple barter, where the plant and machinery and the software is just being transferred from one person to another, then I don't think I, as a security or financial assets valuer, will do any role.
so we can think of having a joint, the valuation.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Dhamija, sir.
Yes.
So it's 12:03. Shall we start the session?
I think we have already started. It is a
Yes, sir,
part
but
of
I
our
have
intro.
to-
Just please introduce. Officially, you introduce.
Yeah, officially I have to introduce. Okay, good
Yes,
evening.
yes, please.
Good morning to everyone. Esteemed speaker of today's webinar, Mr. Harish Chander Dhamija, our chairman, SP Sharma sir, the original participants, and my colleagues from Divya Jyoti Foundation. I, Kajal Gupta, manager of Divya Jyoti Foundation, extend a warm welcome to you all in this webinar. The today's topic of webinar is drafting of valuation report. As we are aware, CS Harish Chander Dhamija sir, a learned and experienced professional, shall take up a session on drafting of valuation report. He is a fellow member of ICAI and ICSI, insolvency professional and a registered valuer. He has more than 38 years of experience in professional, and he has industry exposure in the field of finance, accounts, audit, corporate law, corporate restructuring, and corporate governance. That is industrial experience in engineering, electronics, and auto sector. He has authored article on valuation for ICSI Journal and is a keen orator. His interest in speaking has motivated him to write Ready Reckoner for valuers of SFA. So I now hand over the proceedings to the Major sir. So kindly proceed. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Good afternoon, participants. Today's session is drafting of valuation report. So in the beginning, I was looking for the participants, how many are from SFA, and I have come to know that the majority, I mean more than 50% are from land and building and plant and machinery. So I'll try to justify, even though it is very simple topic which has been given. So I've divided the presentation, and I will be starting from drafting part and would like to integrate for all these three type of clauses. So let us start the session. Yes, drafting. Drafting SFA, plant and machinery, and land and building. So I thought we should have some, the takeaway. What are the prerequisites for drafting a valuation report? I mean, what are the prerequisites? Amrita, can you touch upon, I'm just touching about the overview, what we are going to cover. I mean, what are the prerequisites for drafting a valuation report? What do you think? Amrita, I think lost the connection. Do you think there are formats for the valuation reports? If the significant information is not available, then valuer, how is going to capture in his report? Say in case of uncertainty, things are not certain, and the live example these days is COVID, then how to capture these paragraphs in the reports? The valuation report and the valuation assignment is coupled with responsibilities. Here the point is how the valuer should report in such a manner, keeping in view the responsibility, because the responsibility on the valuer is huge, and how the responsibility factor can be factored in by linking to the scope of the work. Can I write in my report that in insolvency cases I have not visited the plant machinery or a plant site, I have not visited the site? Can I write? So in case, earlier I have been discussing, in case of plant and machinery, who will do the valuation for intangible assets? And again, the liability class, if any other expert is involved. How to write through a caveat, limitations and disclaimers. Mr. Sandeep, whether IBBI has issued any guidelines on so far on valuation? Any guidance note? Mr. Sandeep Sehgal, please unmute.
Yeah, sure, sir. No, sir, I think IBBI has.
Whether IBBI has issued any guidelines?
No, sir, I don't think IBBI has issued any guidelines, but I think respective IVOs have time to time issued some guidelines. For example, obviously the standards is one thing. And the other, for example, which may contain what content should be there in the report. And I think regarding caveats and limitations, I think an year ago some guidelines came from IBI, which was circulated by the respective IVOs to the registered valuers.
Yes, you are very right. These guidelines, even though it is relating to caveat, but it covers the format also, the content also. So beautifully it has been drafted. I'll share those, So that is why any valuer, whether it is a land building, plant and machinery, SFA, without IBBI guidelines, I think he cannot survive, because the legal capturing of the responsibilities, the caveats, I'll cover in my presentation. There is a powerful guidelines, and guidelines are going to protect the valuer. And in the next line, I'm saying what are the permissible caveats. Do you think as a valuer, which standards are to be followed? We have standard issued by CA Institute. It is not CA Institute, ICAI Evaluation Board, which has been adopted by ICAI RBO. And we have international standards. So the drafting cannot be in isolation. It has to be it start with the purpose. Then you have a valuation standard checklist. Then based on the basis and the premises of the valuation, the selection of the methods, selection of approaches and methods. Then you have a process, as and when any assignment is handled, there is a input, there is a process, and there is a output. What exactly, here the requirement is, at every stage, we should have an input checklist, we should have a process checklist, output checklist, so that the points cannot be left out. So I will be sharing about a few of the checklists. To make the assignment simple. So because I'm into SFA, I would like to thank, a special thanks to Mr. T.S. Chandrasekhar, who has helped me in preparing for plant and machinery and land and building. I have taken the help and advice of Mr. Chandrasekhar. He is from Bangalore, the registered valuer and chartered valuation surveyor and chartered engineer. So let us start with the contents of the evaluation reports. Mr. Sandeep Sehgal. Sandeep,
Yes, sir.
from where you will, from where we can get the list of contents or a format of evaluation report? Can you share your experience on that?
So I think format is as such not prescribed, but yes, contents are prescribed.
Very right, very right. Where we can find those content?
So I mean, generally, since I am from ICAI RVO, so I refer to their material only. For example, I mean, they have their own set of standards.
Can you repeat? You are from
So
which
I am
RV
from
you are referring to?
Chartered Accountant Institute,
Okay,
ICAI RVO.
right. Then,
So in their standard, there is one of the standard which prescribes the contents of the valuation report. So generally, I follow that.
okay. So you said you are referring to ICAI, the standard valuation standards.
Yes.
Okay, very right. Now, you see on the screen, the contents are available in the international valuation standards. Basically, we have a number of international bodies, and there is a standards are there, and one of the standards talk about the contents. Similarly, here we will be covering, in the subsequent slide, I would like to cover the content part, which is given in the International Valuation Standard, International Standard ISVSC. is a, International Valuation Standard Council. We will be covering RICS, we will be covering EVS, AI, CPA, and then try to figure out and make a master checklist for content. So the part 1 is basically into the first one, the international standard. Second part will be towards the requirement given in the company's registered valuer and valuation rules. And third is IBBI guidelines, incidentally covers the report content plus, caveats. So that 3 will be covering one by one. In part 1, see, there are valuation standards. We have a country, valuation standards, and linkage with IVS. Mostly the international valuation standards, IVSC Council, International Valuation Standard Council, they have issued these standards, and we will find these are most prevalent and used by various countries. Even if you see the UK Red Book, it is accompanied by International Valuation Standard. In Canada, we have another, practices, Australia, New Zealand, but you see, majority of the countries are following IVS. Now let us see the index, or I have the coverage under IVS. So this is IVS we will be covering. It is important to note that IVSC has issued 5 general standards and 7 specific standards. Here, if we concentrate on only the reporting standard, then 103 is the standard which we are talking for today's discussion. So it means the 103 is a reporting. Then we will go to 103, what exactly it says. Again, if you see from this slide, I would like to correlate and make a cohesive attempt that on the left hand side, these are standards which are applicable to SFA, land building, and plant and machinery valuers. And on the right hand side, this plant and machinery, we have a specific standard 300. For land and building, we have 400, and those the land and building or properties in work in progress is 410, and other are relating to SFA. So basically these 12 standards are, it is a prerequisite for a valuer to have a full detail knowledge of the applicable standards, because the valuation report is to be based by considering the other standard also. because the 103, it is not in isolation. It is basically a concluding part. So it has to be capture 101, 102, bases, approaches, etc. And in the standards, 12 standards, you will find there is a one dedicated standard, 300 on plant and machinery. But as and when the standard is used, for example, the plant and machinery, he has to consider all these these five, sorry, and then three along with that. What I would like to say that the plant and machinery valuer has to follow IVS 300 specifically, along with 101, 102, 103, 4 and 5. Similarly, for real property interest, here the important thing is, it is always, in case of land and building, RPI, real property interest, you will find the word interest. Here the valuer of land and building will have to follow 400 along with 101, 101, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 101 talks about scope, 102 is an investigation. Here the valuer is expected to do an investigation, and he has to collect the evidence. Further to note, because the scope, why we are discussing scope? Scope is to be spelled out in the valuation report clearly, because it is linked with responsibility, it is linked with liability, and to go further, 103, again it says the idea is to communicate. It is a communication mechanism. It should be clear. It should be without any ambiguity. No misstatement, etc. This we will deal in detail. And the valuer cannot start any assignment without knowing the definition or a value, whether it is a fair valuation or it is a liquidation valuation. So these are the prerequisites. I hope I will request Mr. Nimesh. Mr. Nimesh. Mr. Nimesh. Mr. Nimesh, I am very surprised. Some of the photographs are still there. Amit photograph is appearing. There is no movement. So should I take the class or not? It is I am going to stop the class taking because people are not visible.
Visible.
Amit, I'm trying to reach out. Amit's photo is appearing.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please come out. Otherwise,
Yes.
Why should I, it is a one-side interaction or Amit, please come out. I was asking one question because,
Yes,
why this, I'm here because of my passion. I'm not a professor or a teacher. Here I'm sharing my knowledge, not, at the end, I will be sharing the formats, etc., which have prepared or, arranged from the other colleague. Amit, I was asking you, what is the full form of Habu? Have you heard about the word Habu?
Habu. Yes, sir.
What is Habu and where it is used?
highest and best use.
And very right. And in which context it is used?
It is about assumptions of valuations. What valuation standards and what method and procedure we should apply.
No, that is not, if you are a valuer, if you are a student,
Yes.
60% marks are required. Now you are valuer. Now we are expecting 100% knowledge of the subject. Otherwise, there will be so many defect in your reports during peer review.
Yes.
Habu, you have explained slightly, you have only 5% you have touched about. Habu is mainly, again I am saying mainly, Habu is the highest and best use. And for example, land and building, it is not SFA. For SFA, still it is a initial stage. In stock, in equity share, you cannot have a Habu, but the things are going on at SFA level also. Habu is basically highest and best use. What is the alternate method to arrive at the value by having, for example, there is a land and building, which is used as a, cinema hall. Can I use as a mall? Can I use as other methods where it is, physically possible, legally permissible, and financially feasible? There are, Habu. Habu is something, unless and until you are aware of Habu, you cannot draft any report. You cannot do any process. Sorry to say. That is why I am referring to IVS and then again referring to 103 and plus specific standards. Every standard is relevant as a valuer. Now, I was referring to 104 on basis of value. 105 is on approaches. And it is very, very relevant to note that, when I was discussing with my other colleagues, those who are into plant and machinery and land and building, especially Mr. Chandrasekharan, which I was referring to, the intangible assets, the plant and machinery, which is, for example, CNC machine, it consists of intangible assets. And for intangible assets, there is a specific standard, which is 210, which is to be looked into. And 300, 400, 410, I will be explaining separately because it is on plant and machinery, it is on land and building. It is basically real property interest. I will say RPI, real property interest. Here also the properties which are under development. Here, I have the other day I have visited or attended the webinar where Mr. Sandeep has given a very good presentation, and it was on valuation of projects which are in WIP, work in progress. Till so far I have only covered international valuation standard. Now we will be covering Royal, RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors standards. Just an index of that. The standard is divided into 6 parts. And today we are going to cover only. Here it is, the RICS issues professional standards. It is called as PS. Then performance standard. These are valuation performance standards. And valuation applications. Very important to note that RICS is also, or incident IVS is coupled with International Valuation Standard, is part and parcel of Red Book, and it is a part 6. James, Mr. James, what exactly was you referring to? Because you are not putting the attention.
No, I'm taking notes.
Okay, right. What is, I have been discussing. Thank you. Mary, I may be, it is my mistake.
No, all detail I have written. I'm just going through it.
Sorry, it is my mistake.
No, sir. It's okay.
The VPS 3 talks about valuation reports, and I've tried to concise that what exactly this. There are 16 points, so I'm referring to VPS. This is a performance standard 3. How many items are there in this? RICS. There are 16 items. And what are the very important to note that they say they have given the serial number also. So-called, not serial, heading. They say the valuer must use those headings also. Why we are discussing valuation standard, international valuation standard? Because valuer has to do valuation as per valuation standard or standard issued by the Indian RVOs. Okay, so that is why we are referring to international standard. Here it says out of 16, I have come across one special point which says, one of the point is, if your standards are away from international valuation standard, then you have to confirm it. Another point is, in case there is a, materiality uncertainty, uncertain things are material, and you would like to draw the attention. Excellent. Because the idea behind this, the 16 points are, let us see one by one. Identification of the valuer, identification of the client, user, purpose, then liability basis, valuation dates, the extent of investigation, source of information, assumptions, approaches, amount, valuation report dates, limitations. Here I found 2 points which are over and above the valuation standards. So there are 2 extra points. Now let us see the next valuation standard, European valuation standard. Here, the European valuation standard, on the same line, I have, summarized, and they have divided into 7 parts. And they have a valuation standard. Their guidance, the important point is, in the Indian context, the guidance word, it has, only IBPI has issued the guidance note. Otherwise, by the name called guidance, as such, the terminology has not been used. So here, the guidance notes are also there, methodology, sustainability, the word valuation and sustainability. Then the information paper, education, qualification, etc. Here we would like to discuss EVS 5. So EVS 5. So it is important to note, when I was going through EVS 5, I come across an annexure, and the annexure is on valuation report content. And again, if you see the content, very important to note, and they divided the content into 4 parts: the basic elements, the description, the valuation, and conclusion. This I have not, it is basically their classification. I have just summarized in a table. Here, the basic elements. And it is important to note that for SFA, valuer, the location, the property, the other things may not be relevant, because the land and buildings, the plant and machineries, there are various factors with regard to, condition of the machinery or a condition of the plant and machinery, the external environmental, the maintenance schedules, the others are very relevant. So which, are relevant, and it has been considered accordingly. If I refer to this, the standard checklist or a classification for residential property, it covers the location, conditions, legal status, approvals, various approvals, the challenges on inspection. Here, so I was referring here, the EVS 5 is European valuation standards. Now, we have, touched about. Now, let us see 103, which is IVSC, the contents. The contents so far we have covered are RICS, EVS, 2 we have covered. But on IVSC 103, the contents are summarized. These are the contents. There are 8 elements which are mandatory as per, scope, intended user, approach, method, key factor, assumption, conclusion, and this. But here the 8 factors. Let us see in part 2. Here we will see the ICAI, RVO, or valuation rules, which covers the content. Now, this the contents are given in Rule 8 to this valuation company's registered valuer and valuation rules. Here I have summarized, in this summarized restrictions, disclosures, dates. Now, in part 3, it is important to note, in part 3, I will be covering IBBI guidelines. This IBBI guidelines also covers the contents of valuation report as well as CLD. This guidance on issue of, it is issued on use of CLD, caveat, limitation, disclaimers in the report. But while drafting these guidelines, they have covered the contents of valuation reports. So these are the, from IBBI guidelines, there are from A to Q, almost same, but in addition to that, these bases and the premises were new parameters included, even the word special assumption. Now, after considering all these 17 points, at the end, by considering part 1, where we value international valuation standards, part 2, we have covered the rules, and part 3 is IBBI guidelines. Now, these are the final 30 points, which are these are again, I'll say this is again a indicative, even though I have summarized it, the word of caution is, it is an indicative. It can be extended. It cannot be reduced, in fact. It can be extended based on the scope of work. Here, the relevant point, there are, as a valuer, dates are very, very relevant, because on a particular date, the valuation is to be done, and subsequent event after that valuation date are not to be considered. Or sometime standard says, if required, there can be a warning through separate letter, because the valuation report is always on a particular date. So these, we in fact, made a consolidated Mr. Siddharth Biswas.
Yes. Hello. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So far, so we have, covered the valuation standards. Sir, Mr. Siddharth, have you gone through the guidelines on CLD?
Not yet.
Okay, I have been using this word CLD. What exactly, can you give the full form of that? Because I have been using it number of times. And in the future also, you will say CLD classes are there. What are those classes?
This is caveats, limitations, and disclaimers.
Yes, very right. Now, because this caveat, limitations, and disclaimers are, though it is at the end of the report, but it carries, the whole gist, the subjective matters, and which are very, very relevant. And IBBI said these are mandatory, these are to be applied after a particular date. I think it is 1st October 2020. These guidelines were issued on 1st September 2020. So almost 4 months, now 3 plus 5 months or so have already passed. So these have become mandatory. Again, very important to note, these are relevant for any valuation, whether it is voluntarily or otherwise. It is mandatory, or it is a regular report, or it is under by statute. They say these are the parameters are to be referred by the valuer. And what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? We will be covering in the next slide. And now we'll be moving towards the CLD part. And after that, if anyone has any clarification, then we'll take up. Mr. Siddharth, screen is visible?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, the guidelines, and here these guidelines were 2020, and you know, Mr. Rajan, Mr. Rajesh and Sunil. Rajan, he, you know, SFA. Mr. Sunil is land and building, and Mr. Jigesh from plant and machinery. And myself was also there. And we submitted the templates for these caveats, limitation and disclaimers. And these were issued on 1st September. And those assignments which are completed on or after 1st October, these guidelines are mandatory. So there, it has been divided into 3 parts. What is the need? Then there's the guidance notes. It is important to note that these guidelines cover the caveat limitation for all these 3 categories. And I would like to share you few of them. So first of all, we should be aware. Mr. James, what do you think? What are the caveats? What is the meaning of caveats? James, please unmute. Mr. James, unmute.
Yes, sir. When we are giving any reports.
What is the meaning, literal meaning of a caveat?
Caveat.
Because if you go through the caveat limitation disclaimer, because you know, it is a sort of, because caveat limitation disclaimers are interchangeability. Sometime, you know, it becomes, should I use a disclaimer word, or it is a caveat, or how do you think? And what exactly the caveat you are referring to? Please go ahead.
The production rules.
Mr. James.
Keeping away the person to do something, to do not do something which is not good for the between 2 parties.
Okay, you know, have you heard about let the caveat emptor? You know, there was a under Sales of Goods Act, or maybe under transfer of property, they say the let the buyer be aware. You know, there is a caveat emptor. Here also, if you see the meaning which has been given in the guidance note itself, they said caveats are warning to the client or the user. So it is a warning sign that I have not done, I am not an auditor, I am a valuer only. I have not done the survey. I am not a land surveyor. I have not checked, I have not done the audit of any accounts, audit of financial. So this is a disclaimer, not disclaimer. It is a caveat that I have not done because it is not part of my scope of work. I am not an environmental specialist. So these are basically, you are giving a specific, caveats. It's a warning to the user that let the user be use it in the contest with a rider that, okay, these are the, because you cannot say it is a qualified approach. It is not a qualificatory valuation report, because sometime in the finance, you can issue a qualificatory report, but in the valuation, it is not called as a qualificatory report, but it is a warning. So that is why they said, what is the caveats? And they say it is a disclaimers, or they say it's a warning to the user. Okay, let the buyer or a user should know how to read the valuation report. So everything has been put on caveat, it has been put on the user or a client for whom we are giving the report. Then the limitations. Then what is the limitation? Standard says, because you are working on input, because everywhere the valuation is to work on input. If there is a restriction on getting the reliable or where the valuer is not in a position to get the information on which, and these are the basic information on which he has to start his working. So basically, limitations are those restrictions on inspection, on investigation, or data available, so that analysis, because his role is to analyze the data, and there is a restriction on non-availability of the information, only then he can put a limitation in his report. Limitation to exercise the work, to perform his duty. Then what are the disclaimers? Disclaimers is a statement to prevent civil liabilities. Very, very important to note. To prevent civil liability. Here, the scope of work plays a major role, and this is being routed through engagement letter. Because in the engagement letter, the valuer has to describe the parameter which are given in IVS 101. Scope of work. If in the scope of work you says audit is not my part, it will save you. The scope will definitely help you and it make it clear, so that accordingly in your report, you will say not part of my scope, not liable also to anyone. Now summarize it. Caveats are warning, limitations are restriction on the valuer, and the disclaimers is a valuer is saying that I will not be held liable because of the scope of work or other parameters. It is important to note that the disclaimer and caveats are sometimes used interchangeably. Again, Mr. Neeraj Sharma.
Yes, sir.
Neeraj, can you read out the first two paragraph?
मैं जूम करता हूँ, मोबाइल पे है ना ये.
Neeraj, voice is, little bit, please increase.
हेलो
Yes, Neeraj.
हाँ सर बताइए
What exactly we are, looking for? Disclaimers
जी
are permissible or not permissible? What exactly we will be?
fiscally verified
नीरज आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
sorry
Yeah, Mr. Neeraj, I think the guidance note says you cannot disclaim that I have not done the physical verification.
जी
And especially, in the case of a IBC, a valuer, it is the prime responsibility of the valuer to visit
exactly
or examine physically.
जी
Here, because it will not be permissible, being a part of his duty. Similarly, for example, in case of SFA valuer, he cannot say that the forecast data is given by the promoters and I have not done the analysis or testing or inquiry. Because analysis, testing, inquiry, investigation, corroboration are part and parcel. It is his duty to go through the projections, to review such projections. That is why they say, because these are part of duties, the disclaimer in the valuation report is not permissible. And another is very important to note. If you see the last line, I'm not touching all the points, but if you see the last point, it says one approach, a registered valuer has to use, registered valuer has to use cost approach, market approach, income approach. All the three approaches are to be used. The valuer, if he is confident or having a most reliable data on one of the approach, standard says there is no need for going for others. But he has to give the justification why he has applied one approach and left two other approach, or uses two approaches, left one or left two. He has to give the justification about the approaches. Because if you see, there are various Supreme Court judgment also. It says there are three approaches. Yes, Indrani, I think you would like to say something.
Sir, I have a question on the previous slide where you spoke about the business projections.
Right.
So this is one case which I had come across where the business projections looked overly optimistic. Like if I look at the current year trend and the revenue, and there is a discussion going on for some acquisition, and the management gives a projection which looks overly optimistic, and one raises questions on that. And they have their justifications, which again, one can make out it is laced with a lot of padding into the numbers. So how does one deal with such situations?
Okay. Now, in such circumstances, I have to do a little bit work, the strong supporting documents. For example, we have to do the client is saying there is a growth of 40% year-on-year basis. Here, that is why if you see the checklist which we are asking the name of the competitors. And if the competitor and again we go for a industry report also. If the client is asking, projecting 40%, then just, take the reason and you'd like to have a homework. If the industry is growing or a competitors are growing at 15%, then you have a very strong point to say. And in the experience in the last 3 years or so, which I'm having experience, we always, the projections are given by the clients. We convince them based on the corroborated data. For example, the competitors, say I'll take one example because I am having a lot of experience in the auto sector. The same assignment, equivalent, I have been doing evaluation for various auto sector also. The projections when I received from them, then I correlated with the ECMA report, Automobile Component Manufacturer Association. They say growth. You have a ICRA or a CARE, other agencies, which also Moody's talks about the industry growth. So based on such data, we have always tried to convince the client and we taper down. We ask them to reduce it. And because it is generally not the role of a valuer to play with the figures given by them, we always give a feedback to the, to the client, and we used to get the working file in Excel, and that all, linked file, not value based. We tell them, please, reduce or, sensitize or make a reasonable growth based on, unless and until they have a different story. For example, if they are saying there's a new model which is going to be there and some outward to inward in-house, localization, etc., or some export or other segment has been added. Otherwise, we always challenge them. And, and the one way is, and which normally happens is, my clients get convinced because of the analysis database. Second, suppose even then after getting the data and you are not convinced, then we factor in through sensitivity analysis or through the company specific. When we are calculating the discount rate, we considered company specific discount, or sometime the revenue data is being sensitized, and at the end we do a sensitivity analysis of the result. If the sale goes by 10% up and down, what is going to be the effect? And if I WACC, the weighted average cost of capital, is increased by 0.5% or decreased by 0.5%, then what is the impact? So we try to correlate the other parameters also, and ultimately when you are having a 3 methods, and we try to correlate and cross check the other methods also, whether they are giving the relatively comparable range or not. So my point is, here the analysis is a prime important, and sometimes the challenge comes in the case of a startup. Yes, you are right. In the case of a startup, there is only, if you start up. So my suggestion will be, just go to Damodran and be, Professor Damodran is a authority on valuation. And he always says that in case the valuation is nothing but a story and number. In case of startup, there is only a story and then the projection. In the running company, the number first, then the story of projections. So the point is, the projections are very challenging sometimes in case of a startup, because you don't have any equivalent or a apple to apple comparable data. Here we, have another scope of sensitization. We can discuss separately, because here we have in case of a startup, the methods are different, and we used to have a sensitivity analysis of 11 or 12 parameters. We can discuss later on.
Okay. Thank
Should
you
I
so
go
much,
ahead?
sir. Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Any other point from? Okay.
Sir,
Yes, please.
would you explain that another expert disclaimer that last but one? Fine.
Yes. What are your views? Please, so that I will also contribute.
Of that another expert, are we giving a disclaimer for work done by any other expert? Findings of the same does not part of the report.
See, here, if you see the list, disclaimer is not permissible. He says, very interesting. Yesterday, in fact, I've been discussing with Mr. Chandrasekharan. Then we discussed and decided. Some disturbance is. Here the valuer who has engaged any expert in the sense, some engineer, a chemical engineer or another engineer in the subject matter. If you have taken the report of non-registered valuer, suppose that fellow is a not registered valuer, non-registered, he is not registered valuer, and he has given the report and you have relied upon it, then it is your responsibility. You will be liable for any defects, any misstatements in the report of expert. But if you have engaged another registered valuer, then he will be responsible. Then you will not be responsible.
Suppose I have taken the help of an environmental.
Sorry?
Environment expert.
Yes.
For this evaluation part.
Yes.
So this the findings or the report of position of that environment expert definitely will be part of the evaluation.
Then you will be the valuer. I have engaged that valuer who is expert in his line. Then I cannot say that expert will be liable. There, every liability, responsibility lies on me. If suppose that fellow is a registered valuer and I have taken his help or advice, then as per the common discussion which we have with our colleague, and we came to the conclusion, if that is a registered valuer, then the responsibility will lie separately on that particular registered valuer. Let us reframe the situation. In case of a IBC, the resolution professional appoints 6 valuers, 2 for every categories. Then all these 6 will be individually liable. So in that case, if all are registered valuer, then directly responsibility lies. He cannot disclaim. But if the registered valuer has engaged any experts, then it is the due diligence or a due, it is the due care in selecting of that particular, on relying upon the report of others. So this is my views. If you have any other views or any other participants would like to add something.
Dhamija, good afternoon. May I add? This is CS Dr. Ahlad Rao.
Yes, Dr. Rao.
One more example. Yes, sir.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Please, I would like to see your, ये डॉक्टर साहब को तो सर मैं भी अपना सर
Sir, I think my rear camera is not working, sir. Namaste.
क्योंकि ये देखिए, राव साहब अगर नहीं होते ना तो मैं आज वैल्यूअर भी नहीं होता.
अरे सर,
Rao Saab ne, we were in the first batch, and there was a boosting factor, and Mr. Rao was playing a boosting factor. When पहला सेशन, पहला बैच था, और राव साहब, डॉक्टर राव, मैं इनका पूरा नाम लेने में थोड़ी सी गलती हो जाती है तो मैं डॉक्टर राव बोलता हूँ. तो राव साहब इतना बूस्टिंग फैक्टर थे अपने फर्स्ट ग्रुप में. तो सर सैल्यूट. अब प्लीज.
Thank you, sir. I think my camera is not working. I'm
no problem.
Sorry for that. Right. Sir, I just want to add, already you are explained very well. Just I want to add one more example that may help to my colleagues and of this batch actually. Sir, what happens in the course of the valuation, we'll find the documents in another language also. This is practically done for one case I'm sharing with you. It came in one document was there in Urdu, and there was no translation or any document for that is required. As a valuer, it is difficult for us to understand that other language. So there are experts in Urdu language also we can take, that was officially recognized. So you can take a translated or transcription copy for that document, and you can rely on that expert, and you can mention in the report also the so-and-so document which was translated, you can attach and mention that expert opinion also. So that what happens, you can mention very clearly in the disclaimer and other part as another expert also. This is what I want to share. Apart from Dhamija ji sir, jo bhi bola na, uske saath saath, this is another way of doing practically in a case to case. This type of things may happen. It may be in, I told Urdu, it may be in any of the foreign languages also. So at that time, the persons who are available in that expert, we can say. Similarly, if a person who is so we are all generalists, valuers are generalists. Suppose if a person is expert in intangible assets, we can take as a second opinion, or value added factor, or valuation validation also we can take, and we can mention that also as a part of the report. These two are the examples which I would like to share with you, sir. Okay, thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Any views? Other would like to add?
Sir, may I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, please.
See, I myself being a SFA valuer, say I have got an assignment in which there is a building which I have to get it valued separately by another registered valuer. Now I have taken the value of that building as a part of the total valuation. Now, what will be the responsibility of that registered valuer whom I have appointed for the building part only?
See, here it is very clear that a person is, if he is a registered valuer, then he will be individually the liable or responsible for his individual report for that part, because a registered valuer is relying on a registered valuer. So is an individual and separable responsibility. If suppose that person is not a registered valuer, only then I will be responsible. Otherwise, it is governed by statute itself. If you see the responsibilities chapter which are there in the rules also. So my thought process is that the registered valuer, individually responsible. For building wala, he will be responsible. You have to attach, in your main report, you have to say that I have relied upon the report of Mr. So-and-so, number so-and-so, because, in the report, you have to give the details of other experts or valuer. Then you say expert / valuer, give the details of that registered valuer, name, responsibility, name plus independence of that registered valuer also, because he should also be an independent one. Then attach the report as an annexure to your report.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, can I ask one
Sir, I
question?
have a question. Like, do we need to consider the appointment letter as the responsibility, or even without appointment letter also? Because, every case we have been taught in COP that will be given an appointment letter. So is that appointment letter will make us responsible, or even without appointment letter also we can consider other RV as responsible for his own report?
See, you have raised a very good point, and that is why if in the beginning I was referring to a very important standard, I'll just going back to the responsibilities.
मी त्याचे की नाही फॉन्ट डिलाइटिश टाइप पाहिजे. ते जातं.
Are you see the scope of work and responsibility, and then engagement letter. So the prime important, that is why if you see in my presentation, I will be sharing you engagement letter. Here, the engagement letter, this is the starting point. Please, this is my sincere advice. Don't start any activity without engagement letter. Because if you see 101 talks about the scope of work, and the scope of works is linked with the responsibility. For example, here you said no audit is required. Then you will say no audit done. You will not be responsible. If this says no physical verification is required, you says no, then you will not be responsible. So everything starts with the scope of work. Scope of work is, if it is beyond scope of work, then the disclaimer. As a prerequisite, the practice is like that, because the appointment letter is not given by normally issued by the client. Here, we used to prepare a engagement letter in our letterhead. I'll show the letter also. As per 101 terms, scope of work, then it goes to the client. After the signature, it comes back. Then it becomes a binding agreement. Similarly, there is another document, very, very important, is management representation letter. Please don't issue any report. This is my suggestion, or the warning. The engagement letter and the MRL are prime important. After that, you should issue a draft report, because the role and responsibilities which are given in the engagement letter are to be clearly covered in our 30-point checklist, which we are discussing in our report. So, should I go further?
Mr. Karmakar was example. In his case, to engage that London building valuer, is it
Yes.
The client, or as a SFA valuer, Mr. Karmakar engaged that can be?
Sorry, voice is breaking.
But Mr. Karmakar was telling, as a SFA valuer, he considered the report given by the London building valuer.
Right.
This case, to engage this London building valuer, it's client, or it is Mr. Karmakar himself?
The client, or Acha, you are referring to a relationship of a client company or a subject company?
Mr. Karmakar was giving one example, no?
Yes, that is there. What exactly now you are saying, referring to?
I referred Mr. Karmakar's
Yes.
example.
Yes.
He told that Mr. Karmakar is an SFA valuer.
Okay.
And he relied upon the given by the land and building valuer.
Right.
In this case, who engage this land and building valuer?
Okay, okay. Here, engagement, here as a good practice, in India, there is no concept of the subcontracting or otherwise it is in some of the countries, it is permissible that the main valuer appoints the other valuer, because here the point is the valuation. The valuer can only be appointed by the audit committee or board of directors of that company. In the absence of audit committee, here my answer will be the land and building valuer cannot be appointed by SFA valuer, because he himself is not a principal. Principal is the client company. All the data will be given by client company. So in my opinion, the land and building valuer is to be appointed by the company which the board of directors or the audit committee of a company who has appointed SFA. So what are your views now? I mean, now I understood.
If client company engage this land and building valuer, definitely responsibility lies with the land and building valuer himself.
Otherwise also, because he has been appointed here, but he has given the report which has been incorporated. While I got your point, the land and building valuer will give his report to board of director and to other valuer also. Here, the what we are doing, if please add, the client company, they have appointed, and this fellow has incorporated the valuation report in SFA. Then while drafting, because he has to consolidate, while consolidating, he has to put NAV of land and building, and based on this report. Then while consolidating report, he will say, if he is a registered valuer, then he will say, I will not responsible for that report. If suppose this SFA has engaged any expert, other experts, then he will be responsible. So this was my, thought process. You would like to add or have any other?
Sir, can I add something?
Yes, please, please.
Sir, in the case of, there is always a practical issue when it happens in the practice. The corporate, more particularly the corporates, which once in a way, whether it is for accounting, mergers, whatever the thing, they always prefer to deal with a single valuer. There is a practice. Whatever the law says or the procedure says, yeah, they simply say that you get it done. So then the responsibility of a valuer, SFA valuer or whosoever takes the lead, he becomes a team leader. There need not be a partnership between different valuers, etc. Only thing, at the time of engagement, the lead valuer has to disclose to the company. In the letter of engagement, he has to mention plant and machinery is going to be done by Mr. So-and-so RV, and land and building is going to be done by so-and-so valuer. The names and the registration number has to be mentioned by the corporate in the engagement letter. That consolidates the whole thing, solves the problem under the current scenario, and in turn, these respective individual RVs will own the responsibility for their segment of work. Yeah, this is what practically is happening, sir.
You are saying that there is a concept of lead valuer also.
There is not a formal lead valuer. See, for example, in a recent case where we had to do for the asset valuations, the company wanted to deal with only L&B valuer. A lot of machineries were there. When the exercise has to be done, I need an engagement letter, etc.
And when we discuss, the company is not aware of the many companies, even the professionals, CFOs, etc., are not fully not aware of the practically they are fully not of the RV rules and all those things. They call one valuer and they give. And for your information, still the practice of taking secure lending valuers, 34 AB valuers for the valuations for accounting purpose, it is going on, going unnoticed. It is a sorry state of affair in the market. Anyway, let us not go to those things. When it comes to accountability aspects and two class of assets are mixed together, the work order either it should be in joint name or other professionals' name has to be named and the registration number has to be mentioned in the work order or the letter of engagement. That solves the whole problem.
I have understood, this initially also when I started the, practices, then also the point was they were willing to have one single window agency.
Yeah, correct.
But in that case, what we suggested, because as the law requires, it is not because my appointment is governed by Companies Act.
Correct.
So we are talking about only section 247, the one small section. And here, the way out which we got was the appointment and the management representation was directly with the company. Though there is a one challenge, we to some extent compromise, we got the fees through the main, or so-called lead valuer.
Okay.
So even though there was a sacrifice on the point of TDS, but as a practice, we are just, not encouraging such practice. And individually, in fact, I refused that assignment. Dr. Rao, would you like to add anything?
Sir, nothing, I agree with you. More or less, both of you have covered the entire main crux points, sir, actually. Nothing to be added from my side.
Okay. Sir, can we move further? I mean, we have understood your, the practical, but the legal compliance is the prime most important. Now the standard says, I think now we are covering the CLD part, where they says assumptions which are permissible. In the valuation report, the valuer can say the relevant laws provisions have been complied with. I have assumed it. I have assumed the validity of the permissions obtained by the company. And one on forecasting here, we cannot give the assurance that the future will be as per the forecasted figure. And now disclaimers result into the warning to the users. Restriction on use, the valuation report. Very, very prime important to add. Another,
sir, if you permit, on the previous slide, can I add something on the compliance?
Yes.
Is compliance of relevant laws, sir? One way assumption is okay. Suppose another way, if report contains balance sheet with the secretarial audit report, for instance, secretarial audit report is a report which talks about the compliance of the different laws. So valuer may say that, I assumed as well as based on the reliance of the secretarial audit report, which was given by a professional, by a practicing company secretary, I have taken like that basis. Instead of assumption, along with assumption, this may be more appropriate to mention in the report. This is what I feel. Not only secretarial audit, like cost audit or any other thing, if any expert in the land and building also, suppose RERA compliances are there, if one expert already given a report to the company or to the public or management stakeholders, that can be taken as a reliance or basis before we come to any conclusion. This is what my thought. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Jesus, you are very right. Even the industrial law, the corporate law, it says relevant laws. Even we say the all permission, factories, etc., because on the face of it, or it is basically it is not a part of scope also. So through engagement letter, we'll say will not deal with, and these are the permissible assumptions. This is the standard says. The guidance as per IBBI also is specifically talking about that. Now, the very important restriction is very important to use. And then another disclaimer can be the actual price can be lower or higher than the value given in your report. Again, important para is, for example, I was referring to ICRA reports or some for beta. I have taken some data from CRISIL, Moody, ACMA. He says, I have not verified such reports. I have just relied upon the published data. So this is also permissible. This disclaimer is permissible. But this disclaimer is not permissible. The fraudulent. Here the disclaimer, a valuer is not liable for any loss, for fraudulent act, misrepresentation. This is not allowed. Because here he cannot, I mean, only the civil liability. He can, through reporting mechanism. But where is a fraud, so much crime or criminal case, then here, or a willful default of the company clients, he says valuer will not be liable for fraudulent act of the directors of the client company. So this is regarding the willful. And what are the advantages? There are advantages and disadvantages also by having the disclaimer. Now, what are the advantages? It will protect, the registered valuer. It acts as a warning to the user. It delimits the liability. So basically, the disclaimers, the permissible disclaimers are always support the valuer. And the overall, the one rider is there. Disclaimers are allowed to explain the limitation faced by the valuer. Means limitation faced by the valuer shall not be for the purpose of limiting his liability or responsibility. He cannot, by way of this language, reduce the responsibility through scope of work which is agreed, which is part of responsibility. Only he can disclaim to the extent limitation faced in getting the information or other parameters. Now let us move to, I will be referring to some of the, caveats which are permissible this I have taken from the guidance note. Whether the land and building valuer, what type of caveat, limitations and disclaimers can be incorporated. First is on the title deed. Here, the valuer, we have not verified the title deeds from the registered office. Legal issues on the land. Latent defect, I mean with the defect which is not apparent on physical verification, the valuer will not be responsible. Then he also says hazardous condition or material. In the absence of statement, we assume that no hazardous condition or a material exists in the subject assets. Accuracy of the architectural plan. Validity of the permits. Here it says RV has not made a specific compliance survey. It's a positive disclaimer that I have not done it. I am not a surveyor. It is not a part of my responsibility also. So I have assumed that the permissions for the land are there. Site survey. He says, I am not a qualified surveyor, and he is giving the suggestion, please get it verified from the surveyor. Similarly, the other parameters are town and country planning, cross verification of data, environmental related issues, tenancy. So here, for land and building, the sample caveats 1, 2, 3, I mean, again, on legal matters, these I have taken from the physical conditions, improvements. This is about the latent defect, sketch considered. You may refer to these, standard language, and we have been using such standards, just the standard language. Value varies, date is relevant, actual realization may be different from the actual sales transaction versus actual versus the valued figures. And this is CLD on plant and equipments, structural integrity. On plant and machinery, about the, maintenance data, etc. he has relied upon. In the absence of statement of contrary, we have assumed that the no hazardous condition or material exists. Again, always, the end use, our report is meant for the purpose mentioned above. It cannot be used. So there are few, the standard caveats. And in fact, this is the copy of notification, or the guidance note. It runs into 17 pages. So it is suggested that everyone should have a copy. See, it says also carries the content, the procedure to be performed by the valuer, and then caveats. So this is our IBBI. Then common CLD, then specific CLD are there. Now let us, I would like to show you some of the valuation report. In addition to that, Mr. Anuj, Mr.
Yes,
Anuj?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, screen is visible, okay?
Yes, sir.
Can you read out what is there on the screen?
Close on COVID impact.
What are your views as a land building valuer? The concept to be covered because uncertainty, there is a things are very uncertain. Otherwise also, because if you see any valuation standards, and uncertainty is there, one of the parameter will be there. You will not, because of the COVID, there is additional parameters. As a valuer, what do you think? Or in the past, if you have issued any reports, how to capture how you have captured that para covering the
Sir,
uncertainty because of the COVID.
I have written is as because of the pandemic, there has been a definite uncertainty on the real estate market worldwide.
Right.
Because of the lockdown, so the value because of the lockdown worldwide, the value of the real estate property may vary as on date, and it is requested for the client to re-verify it whenever it is used in the future. And exact, if you want exact one, I have written exact also. I can read it.
Very good. In fact, I was expecting, the answer like that, because this is the real, the reply in the sense how to capture COVID impact, and the various the international standards. The bodies are there, and everyone has started issuing the guidance on that. Even for the normal sectorial audit or a finance audit, there have been a guidance note by the respective institute on the valuation also. They have drafted the language which we are just referring to. Thank you, for supporting me, because on the next slide, you will find I have taken the language from RICS, the Royal Institute, what they have said about the COVID. And I'll show you a full report which has recently, there is a public issue or a so-called fund issue by some power sector, power grid. One company, they have issued the RPA, the red herring prospectus, RHP. And in that case, I'll just share you a valuation report consisting of 142 pages. See the valuation report, and that too on a power project. And when you are a SEBI registered company, when there is a SEBI controlled units in that company, in that SEBI real estate or infrastructure units, they have issued the prospectus. In that, I have seen the latest one, and the issue report has been issued by RBSA. Everyone is advised, please go through, take out the printout or a hard copy, soft copy of 142 pages. And they have elaborated. Can you imagine that they have considered the projections for next 35 years for a power plant? Beautifully. I must appreciate, because I have also experienced, I also done evaluation on a solar project. I conducted, we have an income method. In income, you have to normally, as a matter of routine practice, people say 5 saal le lo, 6 saal le lo projections. But in that case, it is linked with the business cycle. In the solar case, I took the projections for 16 years, because there is a solar project, reduction in the capacity, efficiency, and at the terminal value is 0. Similarly, on the same ground, this power project report, which consists of 5 power projects which are being taken over by one of the units, and the RBSA has given a report, and it has considered 35 years projections. In power sector, you have a fixed power purchase agreement, PPA. And, just I was correlating, they have used the same language with respect to COVID, which I am just going to share it. So, everyone is advised, this is a sample or a, informative, and one has to modify according to their, these are the language which I am using, RICS guidance COVID. And same language, they have copied and pasted or utilized, I'll say, in the valuation report, which has been issued recently. And which you have rightly, Anuj, you have rightly said the same thing, that because of COVID, because we cannot arrive at the impact of a COVID, but we have to put a warning signal. Had the COVID not be there, value would have been different. So the valuer should have put more extra efforts. He should have, because the buyer or a user have to be, alert. So here the language is the COVID-19 was declared as a global pandemic by World Health Organization in case further wave escalated. See, restriction on ability to inspect. Because of COVID, any restriction on information or ability to inspect the investigate must be clear, agreed by the client. Now he's saying at the time of scope of work, RICS is saying if such restrictions are there, please amend your scope of work. And even if say, if it is not possible, if the regulated member means those who are registered with IRC, because it is meant for them, it is not possible to provide the valuation on restricted basis, the instruction must be declined. He says, valuer cannot say that I have done the valuation as per standard. He must refuse or qualify his statement. Because of the COVID, he says, example, he says, I am not in a position to work out a rental. Then he has to consider the other alternate methods. And such other alternate method should be near to real, actual. But he cannot say, I have not done any, but he says, go for step 1, step 2, step 3, even though restricted information. And the language, the sample language, Anuj, you said, this is the warning para. They said, in respect of that particular sector, on a valuation date, we continue to be faced with the unprecedented set of circumstances and an absence of relevant sufficient data. Our valuation is hereby reported as being subject to material valuation uncertainty. Consequently, in respect of these valuation, less certainty, higher degree of caution. See, this is the language they have recommended. And just on the screen, this is RB SA in their report. Same language they have used. Same, outbreak, which I have referred you. So it has become a very important. So I thought I must touch upon that. And now I think somebody has raised one hands. I think it is better if can ask the question. Somebody has raised the point. No? Because I'm not in a position to look into the chat box. Now I'll be some of the now, in fact,
one question, sir.
Yes, please.
Did IBS give any report like that, like Arik said regarding COVID situation?
Yes, yeah. Okay, you are very right. Every institutions, any body, I wrote one article also in April last year. There was a COVID when it started. Then I have a consolidated guidance. They have issued the guidance note. Every authority, every body, valuation standard body, IVSC Council, RICS, everyone has issued. Why they have issued in last year? Because the point was valuer should not be too optimistic or too conservative. There should not be any duplicacy, or there should not be double edge. It has it has a double impact. Suppose because of COVID, they put an alarm that you have already reduced the sales line in income method. You know, we have, while I'll just giving you the reply, when the International Valuation Standard in the month of April last year, they said, when you are projecting an income, you have already reduced the revenue by giving a discount, by considering impact of COVID, that there will be a V-shaped recovery or say be this type of W-shape of recovery. He says you have already considered the revenue, then don't consider the same impact in the discount, because otherwise, you know, top line also, discount also. To give an alarming to the valuer, even all the, you know, big valuing agencies or so-called, not agencies, big four, KPMG, PwC, all, they have also parallelly issued the warning or instruction to the valuers on the COVID. So it is my suggestion, just Google it. Otherwise, I can share in the group on COVID impact, April onward. Everyone is keep on giving. You know, another point I'll just tell you, which was which I left yesterday. My friend, colleague, Mr. Chander told me. He says the RICS has issued a separate guidelines for India also. Oh, then it was a, you know, a very good, you know, it was a additional point for me. Yesterday or day before yesterday, he said, can you know, I mean, do you know that, because normally as we are SFA valuer, we are more relying on International Valuation Standard and updating. RICS, when I gone through the Indian standard, they said country specific additional guidance note, that if any valuer is RICS valuer and is doing a valuation in India, then he has to be very careful on the following 7 or 8 parameters. So in fact, yesterday I took the printout of those. You know, they said it is called RICS valuation, global standard, India national supplement. I mean, I was, thanks to Mr. Chandrasekharan, I mean, then I gone through it. It means every foreign body, so-called, have issued the guidance for Indian sector also, for Indian valuer, their member doing the valuation for India. So it was a good news, or it was a learning for me. So thanks for, you know, sharing. Now, can I move further, sir? Because,
sir, one question, if you permit, sir.
Yeah, please, please.
Sir, I am Dilip Kumar Jain from Indore, registered valuer PME. As you rightly said now, that for Indian valuation, specific guidelines have been issued. So in our country, parallel economy is running, sir, as everybody knows.
Yes.
So how that IVSC and all that is being addressed in this reference, sir?
You know, here the IVS is, you know, for such country specific. I'll give the reply in another way.
Sir,
they are issuing the global standard and the country specific standard, which I'm only gone through the, you know, based on the latest out results which I've seen. It covers the latest amendment. It does not cover the economy, because economy is governed by Moody's reports, by ICRA reports, you know, or because the Moody reports are basically been converted into Indian. So as a matter of fact, as a valuer, in my opinion, and based on the Indian so-called supplementary reports, they have touched upon the relevant amendments on account of taxation. For example, which section he has to refer, whether how he has to do the impairment testing under INDES. You know, INDES is a big challenge, and a foreign valuer, RICS valuer member is doing a valuation under INDES. How he has to tackle it? What standards are there? You know, because we have been doing valuation under INDES also. Here we know 113 is there. As a land and building, you have to do a valuation property valuation. Here in my opinion, or to sum up like that, the global standards are giving two standards. One global, second for their country itself. It is called local. Third is Indian. So which I have seen is 3 type of standards, and the Indian standards are meant for their members. And so far as the projections for the country, I hope here the Indian valuers, we have been taught how to tackle the economics, in the valuation course, the economics, the DP, the GDP ratio, the reverse repo rate, economy, NPA. I hope that we as a valuer has to take care, because they will just touch upon the.
Sir, to be very specific, the black money component, how it is being addressed?
I think we can discuss it separately, because valuation, I'll tell you, I have not touched upon the major subject which I have presumed. What is value? I will not say, I cannot be I will not accept any valuation assignment unless I'll say what value. It is a fair value, it is a market value, it is a rent value, synergy value, investment value, equity value, or liquidation value, or fair market value. There is a difference between fair value and fair market value. So my point is, any assignments, because we have not touched upon that subject, our core subject was, or idea was drafting of the report, but it starts with the value. What is value? The one, but I'll talk about the, then you have to refer I will not say value is the what you pay and price what you pay, value what you get. No, it is not relevant for me as a valuer. You cannot write this citation in your report. You will say valuation is defined under section so and so, IVS, IVP. I have considered 101 definition this. Standard says this. Fair value is a value which is between a knowledgeable party, willing buyer, willing seller. Market is there. Due diligence. I mean, there is a definition is there. Liquidation is assets value, sale value, piece sale. I mean, that I have not touched. That is the core area. Black money, I think maybe has a different big subject. Maybe parallel economy. I don't have much, experience on that, or I cannot talk on that subject in the channel, I also, otherwise, I am in a law compliance, so I will not.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate.
Please. Now, I'll tell you, can I go further, sir? Now, the timeline will be, I hope, with the permission, can we go up to another 15 minutes? I think it is about, our timings here up to 2 p.m. and now it is about to be 2. So with your permission.
Sir, we can continue.
Yes, I would like to continue for another 15 minutes. After that, you may please take your lunch. I will be sharing about the index. And you will be surprised, or maybe otherwise know, that I have only covered slide number 8. I have not touched from 1 to 7. First, from 1 to 7, I have more. It is about basic things. Now now I will be sharing you the 8th slide, which covers the valuation content only, or a checklist. Again, the checklist is based on the input given by colleague and the other parameters. I will be sharing you index for process, and then few sample reports. Okay, the valuation report to have an idea. And I will also show you engagement letter and management representation letter. specimen, and you have to modify it according to your requirement and legal compliances. So here the and I will be sharing you the index SFA, plant and machinery, and now SFA.
Sir, please share the PPT also.
Yes, we will share. These are meant for you. I have prepared for all these participants. I am happy to note that now, maybe because of compulsion or otherwise, now we are having the participants. I'm going to take the photograph. The around it is 100. You know, there are 100 participants. Now it has become 99. No problem. Now see, the index these are first is on SFA. I have made it 30-point checklist for SFA. Prime important, I mean, it is better. And this is based on our valuation standard. Indian, the valuation standard issued by ICSI RBO, adopted by ICSI RBO, and other valuation standard international. And we have consolidated and made it as a comprehensive checklist for report. So these are 30 parameters. Caveat and limitation if the end, and we have already discussed a lot on that. For plant and machinery, because in plant and machinery, what I have gathered is, because it is a circumstantial and the condition which are more relevant. In the case of SFA, the factors are relevant, but the physical condition, the external, maintenance parameters are important. So that we have captured, here it is again an indicative summary of 21 pages, 21 items. Basically, here the location, the industrial product, manufacturing process. As a SFA, we don't give emphasis on the process part. We don't give the emphasis on technical parts. As a SFA, we only look into the commercial, because we have to arrive at an income approach, etc. Here, the capacity, the maintenance schedule, and the departure also. Departure is departure from IVS or any other standards. There are few departures are permissible. And this I was referring to plant and machinery, 1, 2, and then annexures. Assets, going concern, photographs. Here I have seen a detailed fixed assets register, then detailed computation, depreciation, considering 4 parameters, maybe technical, functional, physical, like time obsolescence. So this four type of obsolescence was covered. If you see the real property, in case of plant and machinery, I have seen the standard is talking about interest. I was looking for a word land and building, but if I say it is said real property interest. So for land and building, it is more on the property specification, location, the size of the, or the, the Gomukha plot hai, or it is a Shermukha plot, like that. Even the locations, the area, economic factors, amenities, surroundings, residential, house automation. These are the comparative data, methodology. One important thing which I came to know was when I was going through $410. I'll just going to that. Before that, I think to keeping in view the timeline, I think it is better to show you this is the valuation report. Now I have started showing you the specimen reports. We are the last leg of the discussion. We have discussed about the contents. We have discussed about caveat, limitation, disclaimers. And now index we have touched, 30-point checklist we have finalized. Now, for accounting purpose, the valuation report, it talks about introduction, purpose, identify of valuer, name, valuer, qualification, disclaimer of interest. Very, very important. Here, whether I'm, related directly or indirectly, or there's a conflict of interest, any other expert involved. And there are 3 important dates: date of valuation, date of report, date of appointment. Here, date of appointment and appointing authorities audit committee. So here we refuse to take any assignments where it is routed through somebody. So it is always better to say no, to get through somebody, the assignment through somebody. Then the particulars of the subject company, then location, capital, nature of business, group companies data. Then you have a Moody's outlook, Indian outlook. The report was relating to auto component, Moody's outlook, CRISIL outlook. ICRA outlook. Then, we have a association, third party, ECMA industries, automotive industry and auto component, ECMA, automotive component manufacturing association. Then we have a SIAM data also. Here, COVID impact. Even this report was issued in March 20, or maybe June, end of March. So these were covered by, these parameters were covered on COVID. Procedure is very important part of, 30-point checklist. Inspection, I have already told you, valuer has to do the inspection and investigation, so-called investigation. Documents relied upon. Basis premises that I have not discussed, but it is basically the definition, which value and what are the assumption. It is a going concern or is a liquidation, or we have another concept called a habu, as is basis. So these are, here it is based on accounting reporting. So level 1, level 2, 3 are normally, in finance reporting, we have a level 1, 2, 3 reporting. Then the caveat limitations. We have annexure 1, computation, annexure 2, DCF method. Here we have a full detail, WAC, risk-free, discount computation. Then free cash flow. Then average of methods. Why higher mathematical? So this was on one valuation report. Now, which, one valuation report I have obtained from my friend and student, in fact, and he has given me the valuation report, shared me the valuation report. Though these are very confidential, I have tried to take out the name of the company, but please, here the purpose is to share you the content. I mean the legal parameters, not the factual content. Say, these are the executive, index, executive summary. Then you have a introduction, brief, incident. Incidentally, there was the incident of fire, basis, interest, assumption, scope, methods, plant and machinery valuation, observation. So here, I'll just, you are already aware, the mainly is the technical description. The
So can you please share those sample reports?
Sorry?
Can you please share those sample reports?
Yes, we will share you after doing some modification if there. Okay, definitely. We'll share you.
Yes, sir.
That is why I have tried to delete the name of the company, but again, I'll scrutiny it again. And now, this is for land and building.
Should we give our mail ID? I will send.
I think if I give you, if you have any group, then we can share on the group, or if you have it is better if you form a group.
Today's meeting group is there on WhatsApp.
Then, yes, I think yes.
There is
Very
a
right.
group for this class, sir.
In the group, I will share it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
The valuation report, etc.
Yeah.
Here my rider will be, or disclaimer is, these are indicative. I mean, sample cases for study purpose. Let the valuer be aware, and he has to modify accordingly to the desired requirement of the statute. So, okay. Now for land and building, mainly it is talking about the land description, basic part, property, title, site, characters, valuation of building, technical details, one land, another land, office, building, all, overview, and then valuation part. Then the summary at the end. So, in fact, I'll just, at the end, I would like to tell you what I am going to send you. अभी आपको क्या क्या मैं भेजूंगा, I'll just tell you. देखिए, yes, this is engagement letter based on 101, scope of work, etc. Duration, confidentiality, fees, termination, all other terms, and followed by CLD. Okay, and another letter I am showing you is a management representation letter. Okay, and at the end, this is the, 394. It is in the public domain. Just valuation report, power grid. Mr. Suresh Chandra, are you there? Suresh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'm there.
You're there, na?
Yes, sir, I'm there.
See, what I am sharing you is it is available at the site the moment you, because in the public domain.
Fine, sir. Sir,
One has to be very careful.
Yeah.
You can, when it is there in the public domain, it can be discussed at any seminar. And because it is meant for the investor also.
Right, sir.
So I thought, even though I'm putting it, I mean a rider on that, and it is a suggestion that everyone must have a library consisting of the valuation standards, the ICRA's reports, the various books which are there on evaluation. For example, as a SFA valuer, I always recommend, because the books on options which are written by J.C. Hull, Hull, and you start going through the website. Those are especially with respect to SFA, Professor Damodharan website.
For equity valuation, sir, which book is better?
Sorry?
Sir, for equity valuation.
I'll share you that slide also. The library should consist of the SFA books, valuation, standards, even though it is the international standard. You must have a copy of that, because as on date, the position is valuer has to use international standard, or I'll not say or, because rule 8 is silent, Indian standard. So valuation standards, everyone should have a soft copy in the library. Achha, okay, this I was referring to, this is a 143 pages report, and everyone is suggested to go through this, just see the index also. And even though here, when it is a SEBI registered units, then the valuation is to be done by registered valuer. So one of the, that is why here the RBSA, being a registered valuer, has issued this report. Under SEBI, investment, unit investment, real property investment units, here the valuer has to be registered valuer. So here, if you just see, I'll just detailed one, and it will be, I think you will find more interesting. And they have considered 35 years data, etc. Beta you will find, WAC you define, sensitivity they have done it. They have combined land and building, valuation and consolidated report. And the valuation is because the company, the unit trust, or the trust is going to take over the running units of the various power projects. So that is why the valuation is required. They have done this. I hope now it is done. I am already crossing the time. I hope you have enjoyed the session.
So
If you have
send
any
those
points,
draft reports. So kindly send those draft reports also, sir.
Sorry?
So kindly send those draft reports.
Yes, yes, we will send you the draft reports.
Yes, sir.
Everything is meant for you.
Thank
We
you,
will
sir.
share
Thank you very much.
the draft report, and the, in addition to that, there are few, I thought if I cover it, maybe may not be possible. I have made an exhaustive checklist. The valuer kit must consist of, okay, and I have made a valuer kit. There are few important case law which every valuer, should start thinking. One of the valuation report was rejected in NCLT because the valuer has not considered, in case of a pharma company, he has not considered the valuation of a technical know-how or a patent of a pharmaceutical company. So they rejected the report with a direction, fresh valuation for intangible assets. That valuer ignored the valuation by saying there has been a notice on the company, and notice is so much serious. He considered the value at zero. NCLT, while giving the judgment, they said a valuer is supposed to use three methods, three approaches. He has not touched income approach, cost approach. He said, okay, I've given you taking it as a nil. Now the direction was given that, to do evaluation for intangible assets. Another important, case law. The land was issued by a Tamil, I think this is the case which I am referring to. The tangible assets is this one. And this is a case where the land has been allotted by the government agency. I think, let me go through it. The government of Tamil Nadu. And it was issued for a specific purpose, for specific end use. Valuer, it was issued at 1 rupee. Valuer giving the fair valuation at 1 rupee or nil. It was objected by the banker valuer. He said, why you have not taken the full value? Judges said you have to do the right valuation of a right. In real property, you have to do the valuation of a right. Where is the right attached to the land? Land is given for a specific purpose. It cannot be used. Cannot be used by third party. It is for a limited period, limited use. Then how can you say it is there is a mistake in valuation? He said there is no mistake, because you have to arrive at a valuation of the right. Right is coupled with the land. Land there is no right attached to it. Then the NCLT said valuation has been done correctly. One has to be very careful.
Sir, I have one question, sir. So I've seen some SFA valuation reports, but they have used net asset method or balance sheet method. So they're using net asset method or balance sheet method.
Yes.
They're deducting liabilities from the assets. Are those valid reports?
No, can you yes. Can you reframe?
Yeah, yes, sir. So I have seen some reports.
You are doing a valuation you are doing the valuation. See, very important question, because we have to be very careful. Are we doing the valuation of assets? Because in liquidation cases, in insolvency cases, the assignment is very clear. We have to do the valuation of assets. We have to be very careful. Single assets, bundle of assets, going concern asset, like that. But otherwise, when the assignment is to do a net wealth, when you are saying worth of the company,
right,
investment value, then you have to deduct the liability. Otherwise, when you are having a valuation of the assets or valuation of the business, is after liability. So one has to be very careful.
So they're using balance sheet value. Are those correct?
Balance sheet value, I think I have not heard about the balance sheet value. They say it is a net worth. Balance sheet value can be considered as after liability, and that too book value of the liability. Very important.
The book
liability.
Value can be taken.
Sorry.
The book values are not fair values.
Yes, book value, that is why if you are a SFA valuer, then
Yeah.
you will find the debt are also tradable.
Yeah.
Then you have to take the market value of debt.
Absolutely, sir. So they're taking
So one
book
has to be
values.
very careful.
So they're taking book values. They're deducting liabilities from the book values.
My point is, see, one is a valuation under statute. One is a valuation for assessment by the entity, by the promoters. If it is a assessment the promoters for their internal, then it is, you have to see, you have to get it in writing what exactly they are wanting. But in that case, that is why in the scope of work, to avoid any confusion, to get is recorded in the engagement letter. One point I will tell you, there is one Supreme one case went to Supreme Court. It was relating to the again related to scope of work, whether the control premium was to be added or not. The judges said control premium was not to be added because it was not covered in the scope of work. So one has to be very careful, decide the scope of work, and the scope of work has to be, that is why, even the format of the report is part of scope of work. The formulas.
Second, the book value is scope of work.
Yes, it can be. You have, then it will not be, then it
there is
will
no
not be,
method.
then
Yeah.
it will not be IVS compliance.
Exactly, sir.
Yes.
But how can give that kind of report?
He says we can issue it, but we will not say we have applied international valuation standard. We will say it is, it is not in, it is possible also. Even I'll tell you, the IVS also give a departure only to the extent legally permissible. Other permissible, other deviations are not allowed.
So we are allowed to give report like that.
If any report, you will not say it is a evaluation standard report, because we have been issuing. For example, they are saying it is for our future planning.
But as a registered valuer, we must comply
As
with
a
that.
registered valuer, you can issue any type of report, but with a rider. The first line will be, it will not be any standard compliance. The purpose is management decision making. Very much possible.
It is possible. It is legal.
Yes, we have been doing. It is
Okay.
permissible also. They said with a rider, with a, let the use of the valuation report. The user, the intended user.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening.
If anyone would like to add.
Sir, may I ask you a question? Like, if you have to report under section Rule 11 UA, Income Tax Act, now
Yes.
How would you mention that on the report?
Oh, excellent! I think you are into SFA.
Yes, I'm in SFA.
See, I am a chartered accountant and company secretary also. So I have been, when I got the first assignment, can you do 11 UA valuation? Then first point was, under statute, who can sign the valuation report under 11 UA? If you go through 11 UA, then you have to segregate, whether the company is required any valuation report? If the answer is no, because in majority of the cases, for example, transfer of shares, standard says you work out as per the formula and keep the working with you. It does not say go for a valuation report. But in that case, I have been issuing the valuation report with the title valuation report under 11 UA. I will not refer any other methods, any other approach. I'll say I have used formula based 11 UA, from these are the parameters. I have used it this. I will not, in the caveat also, in the limitation also, I'll write end use, and at the end, I'll conclude that it is under 11 UA. Under DCF method, I cannot sign. Only a merchant banker can sign for DCF method and further issue of share. For again, it's a very beautiful subject, or a very interesting subject. Income tax, even FAMA. In my presentation, I have made a presentation, purpose of valuation. In that, I have tried to capture the FAMA report. Can I sign a report, FAMA? The answer is a chartered accountant can sign, or a merchant banker can sign, or a cost accountant can sign FAMA report. But here, the international valuation standard methodology is to be issued. I mean, let us, it is a very, vast subject. Your question, answer to your question is 11 UA. You start with 11 UA, end with 11 UA. Don't refer that you are a registered valuer. You can sign in any of the capacity. Don't use the, as a registered valuer same.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
We have been doing like that.
Hello.
Sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
please. Go ahead.
Sir, this is Rajkumar Patait from Pune.
Yes,
I'm
please.
land and building valuer.
Okay.
I want to ask two questions. One question is that Mr. Rao said that any documents which is in another language, we have to translate it in English or any other which can we understand it.
Right.
So whether that person should be appointed by us,
right.
or
Just a minute.
we have to mention it. And second question is,
can you repeat, because there was a disturbance at my level, and I'll request Dr. Rao if he is there, or other members. Here I would like to have the need and support of other valuers, because Dr. Rao, are you there? No problem. We will take. I'll try to answer, or I'll take the team opinion also.
And my second question is that, sir.
The first question, can you repeat, because there was a disturbance at my end?
Sir, if the documents which have been submitted for our assignment is not in the language, we have to refer, as Mr. Rao said.
Yes.
If you want to refer that in English, so whether we have to appoint a special person for it, or we have to mention in the report.
Okay. Okay, here I would like to give the answer. Maybe differ from Dr. Rao, because here the spirit, when I was referring to that, they said, do you have appointed a expert for technical advice? Or so from there I was drawing the conclusion, because he is also having an opinion. Here, in my opinion, he maybe in our report, we will say procedures and documents relied upon. We will say this along with the English version. Okay. Here, I will not consider him as an expert, to be expert in my language, or in my opinion, the somewhere expert is also defined. That is basically some technical person advice may be considered. This is my thought.
Okay, sir. My second question is that, hello.
Yes, yes.
My second question is that when we take an assignment, whether we have to give the values by all the three methods, cost approach method, income approach method, we have to give both the values for that in a report, or we can refer for one only, valuation by one method.
Very right. Again, in my earlier discussion also, standard says you have to compute. See, listen very carefully. Very carefully. There is a, direction. We have to use three approaches. There is no deviation allowed. Every approach has various methods. Okay. But three approaches. You have to say approach 1, approach 2, approach 3.
Okay.
If suppose, because of lack of information or other parameters, I am not in a position, because the standard says you have to give your report based on the reliable input. The inputs which are reliable for any of the approach should be given as a higher weightage. It says give more weightage to the market value, more weightage to the market or observable input, and then lower to adjusted, and then third is the internal financial data. Standard says you have to apply all the three approaches, and you have to rule out. Another very important, IVS says, again, just read, they said valuer should finalize his report based on one approach. See the rider. Then next says, if you are not comfortable with one approach, you cannot conclude, then go for another answer. But you have to write down 1, 2, 3. Selection of other or rejection of others has to be clearly mentioned in the report. That is why if you see the caveat, which are not, when I was referring you, there is a caveat. Caveat cannot say, I have applied only one approach. IBBA guidance note says, he has to mention that, because there is no, but the conclusion can be very important. The conclusion can be based on one, it can be two, it can be weightages, but it has to be considered. He has to consider all the approaches, and mind it, method also. We have a separate, again, a Supreme Court judgment on that. Very interesting case, which if you are a registered valuer from SFA, then it is part of our syllabus that, even the methods are also important.
Okay, sir.
Okay, but all these three approaches, there is no, you cannot write one line report. Okay, I'll tell you, I was just a few minutes. I'll tell you. I'll show you the valuation report which I have been using. And valuation report on valuation of intangible assets. A detailed report. क्योंकि हमें क्या है, ultimately we have to preserve these reports minimum 3 years, and it can go up to, legal requirement of 8 years. As per valuation, the inspection can be done by IBBI or RVO within a period of 3 years. So these reports are, management of the report is also important. Sir, can we, any point, can we wind up the session or?
Sir, I want to ask one question.
Yes, please.
LD. I have from Mumbai.
Yes, sir.
Done one valuation for the bank, land and building. It is a one flat valuation. In my valuation report, normally we consider RCC building. The normal age is 60 to 80 years. So we have that building is around 30 years old. So I have written that expected 30 years of proper repair and maintenance. What happened? The building is located near to the market, so they people as going for redevelopment. And for redevelopment, it is necessary under Municipal Act that declare that building is a dangerous building. So they have collected that certificate from the structural auditor, and they are issued a notice to the bank that we are going to, society has issued letter to the bank that we are going to redevelopment and building is under danger conditions. Bank has issued letter to me that you are mentioned that age is.
Sir, voice is breaking. Last paragraph we have not.
Issued letter to me saying that you are mentioned in your report that building will last for another 30 years with proper maintenance. In such cases, we have to write in CLD that structural things we are not responsible.
Yeah, my first, even though because of my general understanding, and because when I was going through the standard disclaimers issued by IBBI in the IBBI guidelines, he says this part is not part of your scope, and you can verify very well, record in your this type of I think it can be routed through disclaimer. Any other views? Any other views of the participants?
Sir, can I substantiate? Sir, can I substantiate?
Can say that
Hello?
not under his
Hello?
scope.
Yes, sir.
Can I substantiate value addition for that?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, it is a typical bank valuation our friend was doing, and he has given 30 years old building, balance 3 years of life, and he has done it. And now because of the redevelopment, they are questioning the thing.
Yes.
The issue here is, now I'll come to the stage of a duty of a valuer when you do such valuations. One of the point he has to mention in the part of the report is, his report do not confirm the structural stability. That is number one. Second point, most important point, in the valuation report, our valuation reports are not engineering reports, they are techno-economical reports. Prima facie. When in every valuation report is a land and building or plant and machinery, we should call it as economic life. Definitely we should not use engineering life. And it becomes the duty of a valuer, if though he is valuing an independent apartment in a particular housing society, the FSI used or a FAR used, whatever the thing, based on your local condition for the whole project, becomes an eyesore for a cash point. Instead of eyesore, it is a cash point for a valuer to be examined and see what is the UDS available, what is the new FSI is permitted for this locality. Is it admissible? Is there any possibility of this structure in the same pattern to continue for a longer time? If not, how long it can continue? What is the probability of a redevelopment? He is supposed to analyze and take a call on that in his report. If he has got an apprehension on the redevelopment, he should disclose it at that stage itself. Why it is essential is, housing loans are not short-term loans, they are long-term loans. The banker expects that the loan should be, suppose if the loan is given for 20 years, they expect at least 50%, 30 years should be the life of the asset, so that in case of any irregularity, they will be able to recover the money. If that is being affected, they feel offended, or they would like to probe into the more things. That is where a caution from the valuer side is required, is what my submission is.
Thank you for valuable inputs for the other participants as well as to me personally. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can we have your mail ID?
Dhamija sir.
Email ID?
Dhamija sir, shall we close now?
सर ये तो ऐसा होता है कि मैं आपको एक बताऊं, एक जगह ना मुशायरा हो रहा था, तो मुशायरे में सब लोग चले गए, सिर्फ एक रह गया। बोले आप क्यों बैठे हो? बोला जिस दरी पे आप बैठे हो ना, वो दरी मेरी है। ये तो आपने कनेक्टिविटी जब तक
59 रह गए हैं, 58 रह गए हैं अब।
हाँ, 58 रह गए हैं। तो क्या होता है, एक लीगल कंप्लायंस होती है। ये अपना ये एक्सटेंडेड हम लोगों ने 15 मिनट के लिए परमिशन ली थी शर्मा जी, पर अब क्या है कि जब सब लोगों का लंच भी लेट हो गया होगा,
अभी
फिर तभी लोग याद करेंगे, अच्छा वो आया था, वो है ना जी।
काजल मैडम कह रही हैं बार-बार
वो तो बिल्कुल, उनको तो बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं अपना जी। प्लीज सर, शर्मा जी।
Hello.
जी सर।
Hello, the session was very good, sir. We have attended we are not at all bored for the 3 hours also if the lecture is going on. Hello.
ठीक है. Okay, sir. Then now we close. Time has come for thanking everyone. Thank you. Dhamija
Sir,
sir,
mail
for
ID
your
and mobile number.
attending and participating and explaining everything with your academic knowledge and your experience. It was very excellent, and you have been insisting on participation of the candidates, which was very useful because all participants remained very alert. So it was very useful, and thank you very much. This topic was chosen by us for the benefit of our new registered valuers. It is useful to everyone, but our idea was to assist our new valuers, and I think they would have enjoyed it and they would have benefited from it. So thank you very much. I request all participants to be
Thank you.
Participate in our
Very
future
nice
programs
class.
also. Thank you, Dhamija sir. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू शर्मा जी, आपने इतना अच्छा मौका दिया. तो IVS 300, IVS 400, IVS 410 जो हमने SFA में नहीं पढ़ा था, वो बड़ा अच्छा लगा. एंड आई हैव ट्राइड टू कोरिलेटेड SFA विद लैंड एंड बिल्डिंग एंड प्लांट एंड मशीनरी. मुझे भी बहुत अच्छा लगा. You know how it is being integrated. Right, sir? Thank you.
Sir, is there a possibility to get the email ID or contact number of the speaker?
I think in the group I'll share my email ID.
Yeah.
I think we are
We'll be
there in the
sharing
group.
with all participants. We'll be giving this the copy of this program, this session, and
Yes.
everything will be shared. Don't
Right.
worry about it.
So email ID of the speaker if possible.
I'll sharing my email ID just now.
Yes. We'll share.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Very good session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.